Yeah, welcome everybody to another meetup of the FinTech and Introtech uh, meetup. Today we host a meetup. It starts right now, and we will maybe take until 8 o'clock. Yeah, maybe just talking quickly about the host while other people are still joining the meetup. First of all, maybe about me. So I'm Matthias from working in my day job for ISG in the workplace space, so digital workplace for banks and insurance companies. And I'm also a host of this meetup, as also Lena is. Maybe Lena, you can introduce yourself a bit.
Hi, everyone. I'm a former FinTech founder and currently in a sabbatical looking for the next job to be joined by myself. And I'm co-hosting this event for, I think, the fifth time. Looking forward to tonight's topic.
And also Jan is also one of our co-hosts. Hi, Jan.
Hello, here's Jan. I'm a co-founder of a web development agency from Cologne called Racelove and contact tracing app Recover. And I'm also running one of the biggest fintech newsletters, fintechweekly.com, with over 20,000 subscribers worldwide.
Fantastic. And today's lineup, I would say, is that we first host a talk of Oliver, who is the CTO of Entity Data Germany, one of the biggest IT provider in the world, or Asia and Europe, I think. And he will talk about the role of the insurance companies in sustainability, how they can innovate, how they can manage their risk and so on. So I'm really interested in it, as I also work in consulting. And then we also host a panel with a lot of people from really good startups like Eleanor from Tomorrow and David from Ecolytic, and also Leslie from U Impact and his Ristan from the Novus Bank in the UK, I think. And we have also a bonus for you today, which is Eleanor, who just joined the lineup, I think one day ago. And she talks about the challenges what fintech companies have that are sustainable when doing marketing. So she will share her best learnings out of that in a very quick 15-minute talk. So I'm really curious about it, as many new neobanks pop up. I think it's a crowded space and there's more segmentation. So I think the marketing in the fintech space becomes more and more important. Cool. And as you might have heard, the topic today is sustainable finance. You might have booked your summer vacation and you might have also bought your Bitcoin after the dip, but now let's talk about one of the biggest challenges we have in this and the upcoming decades, which is the climate change. And this is, from my perspective, not only affecting car companies or energy suppliers, but everybody has to do, all industries have to do their part when it comes to mitigating the effects of this climate change. And I also think there's a huge demand from the regulator and also from the consumers. So there's also a lot of business to make with that. For example, if you're a provider for services for banks, you can maybe help them to navigate the transformation. Or if you're a bank and want to offer a differentiation to other banks, you can offer people or help them to live a more sustainable life. So I think that's there's also a lot of money to make in the space from that transformation. So basically we start with insurance and then we head over to the banking and asset management space and discover what's going on there. And also Lena on LinkedIn provided a poll, and people she just asked, the financial industry is the key to tackle climate change, and 38% said I agree. I think they just wanted to be nice to Lena. But also 26% they disagreed. So maybe we can convince also more people to agree today. So that would be a nice vote. And that the topic has traction, you can also see from money that is flowing into this ESG criteria-based assets. You can see clear growth in money that flows into these ESG-based assets, and I think it will continue. And also sustainable ETFs, for example, outperformed their not sustainable ETFs. And yeah, so there's also a sign that companies that take care about these ESG criteria, that they are also more successful.
Yep, next speaker up is Eleanor. Eleanor from UK, working as a brand and marketing lead at Tread, a very young company, a very young green fintech. And when I prepared this event, I talked to Eleanor and said, asked her if she would be so kind as to share her learnings and the challenges which arise while marketing a green fintech. Eleanor, welcome on stage.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. I'm just going to try and share my screen first of all. Working for everyone?
Yes.
Full screen? Brilliant.
Yes.
So my name is Eleanor, and I'm the brand and marketing at Tread, which is a green fintech designed to help make people's money work for them and for the planet. The way this will work is I'll quickly introduce you to Tread if you haven't heard of us before, and then I'm just going to spend a bit of time going through some challenges and some problems which I think all green fintechs, not just Tread, will have to tackle in the next few years as the space grows. I don't have very long, so I'm sort of asking questions and maybe not giving all the answers, but hopefully it's interesting food for thought. So as I was saying, Tread is a green fintech, and what I'll do is quickly tell you guys about who we are, and then talk through a few of the challenges that are facing people like Tread and other people in our category. I think they're partly marketing challenges, but they're also kind of problems that the sector as a whole will be facing. So hopefully there's kind of applicable learnings for more of you guys on the call. So very quickly to talk you through Tread, as I said, green fintech, and the first product that we're launching this summer is a green debit card that helps people spend more sustainably. And there's kind of two parts to our sustainable model. One half is the fact that we as a business operate sustainably, and the other half is that we help people be more sustainable. And I think those two parts are quite important, and I'll come back to them later. But to talk you through a bit how that works, in terms of how we operate as a sustainable business, every time people spend with the Tread card, they help us plant trees. So we take a percentage of our revenue from every transaction that people make, and we contribute that towards reforestation projects. So at the moment, we plant trees up in Scotland, in the north of the UK. And our model is to put sustainable kind of projects and sustainable giving back. And then on top of that, the actual product that we offer helps people live more sustainably too. So we have a tool that means that every time people spend, their carbon footprint is calculated, and we can kind of tell them data about their impact on the planet and help them improve. So specifically, there are 3 features that help us do that. The first is tracking. So every time you spend, we calculate the carbon emission of that transaction, and so basically the impact that that transaction's had on the planet. We tell you how to reduce your impact. So we show a breakdown of your spending month by month. You can kind of see where your biggest impact is going. You can kind of understand where you can reduce it. And in future, we'll be giving you personalized tips as well on how to reduce your impact on the planet. And then the third element of our product offering is offsetting. So obviously, we're all going to have some level of carbon emissions that we can't cancel out. And if that's the case, we offer people the opportunity to offset their emissions. So we plant more trees for them, and then the trees will kind of absorb the amount of carbon on a monthly basis that you've given out. So tracking people's emissions, helping them reduce their impact, and letting them offset the rest is the core model that we're going to launch this summer. We've obviously got more stuff coming down the line, but this is kind of core product that we're offering at the moment. So that's a very quick overview of who we are and what we do. But as Lena said, the reason I'm here is to talk a bit about the challenges of marketing and selling green fintech products like this. I'm probably more focused on like B2C retail fintech products because that's obviously the space we're in. But I think there's some things that are relevant to like the B2B and corporate side of the industry as well. So the first challenge that we've been experiencing is the challenge of effectively establishing a new category. So we find that consumers are very comfortable with the idea of sustainability in categories like fashion or beauty. But when it comes to fintech and specifically like consumer fintech, what sustainability means is a lot less clear. It's quite a broad term. Like Oliver was obviously talking about kind of social impact and like supply chain, you've then got environmental things. It's a quite vague word and it means a lot of things to different people. So we're basically having to educate consumers on what sustainability means for them in this category, and then also what our product does and how it helps them. And the product is quite complex, so it's quite a challenge to tell people what we are, what we're doing, and show how it's relevant to them. And I think this is probably something that will improve over time as the category grows and more people come into it. But ultimately, we have quite a big barrier in terms of needing to explain complex things to people who obviously have short attention spans. And clearly, as startups, our marketing budgets aren't huge. So I think there are a couple of important things that come into this from a marketing perspective, things like utilizing existing customer networks and referrals. So basically getting your customers to do your work for you by showing a card to their friends or like telling people about the app. But I think it also comes into how we market ourselves and the kind of content and comms that we put out there. We need to make sure that we don't assume people know who we are, and we have to go through a probably longer process of establishing ourselves, explaining what we do before people are kind of ready to come on board and ready to trust us with their money. Speaking of trust, I think that's the second big challenge which the category faces when it comes to marketing. Obviously, every money and finance brand talks about trust as being really important, but I think it's especially relevant for small tech startups that people have never heard of, because they're like, who is this company? I've never heard of them. Why would I give them my money? Why would I trust them with my money? We all think that money is like a rational topic, but actually it's hugely emotional. It's people's salaries, it's their life savings, it's the money they need to spend on their kids' education. Like money is a really important emotive topic. And so we need to make sure that we're building relationships with people that make them trust us and make them willing to let us hold their money. Ultimately, people's trust in us arises from their experience with us and the kind of behaviors that they have. So we're really conscious that the first impression we have with people is like the most important touch point we have with our future consumers. Like if the first time they download the app, it doesn't work, or something breaks, or the transaction doesn't go through, like that's it, you've lost someone from the start. So we're really conscious of building a customer experience that works, that's clear, that's not complicated, because if you lose people at the start, it's really hard to get them back. Another important element of building that trust is making it possible for people to come to us slowly by degrees. So you don't have to actually have a Tread card to use Tread. You can link your existing bank accounts to us. So if you have like an HSBC account or a Monzo account, you can link them into Tread and use the carbon tracking feature. That's really experiment first and see how it works, test it out before they have to start transferring their money over to us. A kind of gradual experience of like developing a relationship is something that we're building into our marketing plans and our retention strategy to make sure that we build that relationship over time from a really strong starting point. The third challenge, which I think is particularly unique to our type of product, is what I've called avoiding guilt fatigue. And what that basically means is, imagine you open the Tread app and you've had a month where you've gone on a holiday, maybe you've driven a lot and your carbon emissions are really high. You're going to look in the app and you're going to think, oh my God, that's a really high number. That's a lot of carbon I have to offset. That's making me feel really bad about myself. I'm just going to close that app and I'm never going to look at it again because I don't want to have to face up to that unpleasant reality of the impact I'm having. And we know that this is a really big problem that we might experience, is that people use the app a bit and then they think, oh, actually, this is just making me feel worse about myself. my carbon footprint's not going down much, this feels too difficult, I'm just not going to engage. So the question we ask ourselves is, how can we make the experience people have with us positive so that they actually want to spend time with us, they want to open the app, they want to engage with Tread in the long term? I think there's two elements to this. The first is our advertising and how we establish that relationship. So much conversation around carbon emissions and climate change is really negative. There's lots of doom mongering, lots of scary news stories. I think there's an opportunity for brands in this space to be a positive voice and to acknowledge the reality of the situation, but also show people solutions and show people like an optimistic way to tackle the problem themselves. The second important part is building like positivity and positive reinforcement into the product itself. So how can we gamify the experience? How can we set people challenges? How can we reinforce them when they like make good decisions? Basically nudging people in a positive way so that they feel good about using the product, and the experience they're left with is one of like feeling good about themselves rather than feeling guilty. It's obviously a difficult balance because we don't want to greenwash, we don't want to tell people things are better than they are, but the way that you build your brand and the way that you reach out to people has to leave them feeling good. Otherwise, they're going to switch off entirely. And in the long run, that's bad for us, but it's also bad for the planet because people aren't going to keep engaging and they're not going to keep changing their behavior. Fourth point, a mass audience. And I think this is a challenge which certainly as Tread, we're not having to face yet because we're still very small. And I don't think there are any sort of green fintech brands that are quite at this level. Maybe the guys at Tomorrow, I don't know, maybe you guys are facing this challenge, but you obviously reach a point where you've got on board your eco-conscious, like hippie, really enthusiastic audience. But as the brand grows, it has to change shape, and you have to start talking to people who maybe are a bit less interested in sustainability. They don't really care that much about like driving an electric car. They kind of know climate change is bad, but they're not doing much about it. And how we talk to those people and how we convince those people to join us is a very, very different challenge from the challenge we have now, where we're speaking to people that are really passionate about climate change, want to do everything they can to stop it, a vegan, never got, you know, like there's a really kind of active core audience who we can speak to, but scaling up is going to be really difficult. Like, again, I think there are a couple of ways that we hopefully will do this in the future, hoping we reach this point. The first is we can bring people in by degrees. So by having a broader product offering, hopefully you'll find one product which is kind of relevant to someone, and then we can bring them in on that journey. And speaking of products, I think the most important thing is to make sure that sustainable and green products are as good as the sort of normal alternatives, because if someone's not particularly interested in sustainability, they're not going to accept a worse product simply for the benefit of it being green. Maybe they'll take a kind of good product with a green bit on top, but we need to be at parity if people are going to join us that are from that broader pool of like uninterested people. So it's basically a big product challenge of how can we be as good as Monzo, but with an extra green layer on top. Like that's ultimately the challenge that we need to face if we want to reach that wider audience. I think that brings me on to the final challenge facing sort of green fintechs and green startups, which is, as the market changes, how do we maintain our differentiation? So this is something that Lena actually asked me when we spoke before the talk. She was like, in kind of 5 years' time, what's your guys' USP? Like, if everyone else catches up with you, how do you guys stay ahead? How do you keep your audience? And it's a really interesting question, because already we've seen in the UK, Starling Bank, who is like a kind of Monzo alternative, they've recently launched a recycled debit card. You've got, you know, big institutional investors like BlackRock committing to sustainability. So if everyone else kind of catches up, where does that leave people like Tread? I think there's two big risks with that kind of market change. First, obviously, is that we lose our advantage and everyone else is kind of doing the same stuff as us, which is, I guess, is bad from a commercial point of view. But to be honest, if startups like us change the market for the better, that's also a good thing. Like, we welcome that. It'd be amazing if every bank saw what, you know, like Savast and Ticker and Climate are doing and improved to like beat us. That's what we want, because that will drive systemic change. I think the bigger risk, though, that you get people like the bigger banks coming into the market. So say someone like Barclays launches a carbon tracker, the risk is that they don't do it well or they don't do it properly, and it's basically greenwashing, and people lose trust in the entire category as a result. And I think there's a real risk that genuinely green fintechs like Tread will be looked upon badly by consumers because they think, oh, that's just another brand greenwashing. They're just like, you know, HSBC or BlackRock. They're just putting sustainability on themselves to sell to people, and they're actually not any different from the rest. And I think that's the real risk with people entering the market and catching up. So a few things then that we need to make sure we do. The first is we really need to work on that education piece that I mentioned earlier, ensuring that consumers understand the difference between us and other brands and other banks. That requires investment in marketing, so it's difficult and the messaging is complex, but it's something that we have to win at if we want to make sure that people understand the category and trust in us. We need to continue investing in product innovation so that if everyone else catches up, we remain a step ahead. But I think the most important thing that will protect us from entrants or kind of incumbents moving into the space is staying true to sustainable, like operational principles that we have. So, you know, I mentioned before that a proportion of all of our revenue goes towards tree planting. We operate as a sustainable business. We're applying to be a B Corp. That kind of institutional sustainability is a lot harder for big companies and big competitors to compete on, because Barclays could launch a carbon tracker, but they still invest in a load of fossil fuels and are going to be doing that for a really long time. And if they don't have the institutional credibility, and if they don't have sustainability at the heart of their business, then they can't compete. And I think that's what's so important for kind of green fintechs and green startups as they scale. They need to keep those sustainability credentials intact, because that's what will set them apart from the bigger banks and the big guys that are trying to kind of compete and catch up. So those are a very top line level are some of the challenges that we're considering. As I said, they're partly marketing challenges, but they're also kind of broader commercial challenges as well. I think the last thing I'd say is I've got my contact details here, because while, you know, maybe some of the guys here or the other brands in the space, we're all competitors, sure. We all want to win customers, we all want to have the best profits, but also we share a common goal. At the end of the day, we're all doing what we do because we want to make an impact on the planet. And I think that a way to do that is for us to work collaboratively, share our learnings, talk to each other, because like I said, we may be competitors, but ultimately we all want the same thing. And climate change, we're only going to impact climate change if we all work together and kind of come up with new ways of doing things and new ways of doing business. So like I said, I've got my email here, I've got my LinkedIn. If you are a marketeer or if you're just interested in what we're doing, please reach out. I'd love to have some more conversations about the stuff I've talked about here. Or I guess if you have a quick question, then drop it in the chat, although I'm not sure how much time we have left. So Lena will have to say whether we have time for questions or not.
Yeah, let's jump on one question, which is, what kind of acquisition channel mix are you seeing in the pre-launch phase in case you are actively marketing? Yeah, so I'll be honest, we're not spending loads, partly because we recently closed a round of funding, which is what's contributing to our marketing budget. But the channels we have been using have been a combination of PR and just like digital social marketing, specifically Instagram. That's what's been working for us so far. But we've actually found like we've had a lot of just organic PR without even having to reach out for it, which I think hopefully speaks to the fact that people are interested in the space and interested in the product, and there's appetite by journalists to write about it and appetite by consumers ultimately to use these products. I think, however, that our ability to get that PR will change as more brands enter the space. So our acquisition strategy in the future is definitely to follow what other fintechs have done before, which is a combination of performance marketing and like really sweating those digital assets, but also leveraging our user base and our community to drive word of mouth referrals and get people that are on our books to share with their network. I think that's how we can hopefully grow efficiently at scale. Thanks so much, Eleanor, for joining and for sharing your learnings. I think it was a great warm-up, so to say, for our panel, which will follow right now. Thanks so much, Eleanor. Good to have you here. Please stay with us. And yeah, to the audience, please connect to Eleanor if you have any further questions. Thanks.
And the next meetup will be in September 16th. because we thought everybody is sick of online meetings and might want to enjoy the summer and having fun, drinking some beer, making love, and then we see each other back in September. Yeah, so that's from my side.